Depending on who you are and what you're trying to do, the property market in Darwin is either a story of gloom or hope. 7% at least vacancy rates in the city and a drop in real estate values across both houses and the unit market. But the question everyone wants to know is how long and how deep the current slump in the market will be for. Brian Haratsis is the Chief Executive of Macro Plan Australia. Brian, morning.
Good morning, Adam. How are you?
How is the state of real estate in the Darwin-Palmerston region at the moment?
Well, it's not in a very good state, but there's nothing to worry about. What we're forecasting for the region, Adam, is a relatively shallow downturn, and I've got some good reasons behind that. But we do see that it will really take till 2018. So how long? It's probably until around 2018 until we see the bottom. And probably in that time frame, we'll probably see maybe up to 10%, but depending on the type of property you're dealing with, maybe between 5 and 12% further reductions in the price of property.
So you expect the market to bottom out in 24 months and house price reductions of around 10% on average?
That's correct, Adam, and that's a pretty modest outcome. When you think about it, our prices will still be higher than just after the GFC. Just before the GFC. So what we're seeing is that the unrealistic prices that really occurred due to the mining construction boom are coming back to what you would call normal levels, and gross state product is going to go back to long-term normal levels, and that all happens around 2018.
I'll get to the mining boom in a second. What about rents? Would we expect them to drop reasonably sort of the same, around 10 to 15%?
Yeah, they've already come off about 10%, interestingly, and I would think maybe 10 to 15% for rent, because there'll be some interesting vacancy. One of the interesting impacts or issues at the moment is that the economic cycle on the eastern seaboard, Melbourne and Sydney, is out of sync. So there's a big pull factor for people at the moment. If you're a tradie and you're not fully employed, for example, there's a building boom in Sydney and there's plenty of jobs. So to some extent, it's accentuating the situation in Darwin where things have slowed down fairly quickly. As I say, they will flatten out, but people are leaving, so there is vacancy occurring as a result of that.
And how did Territory Business on your data and on your research, how did they deal with the mining bust, the end of the mining boom? Were they ready for it?
Mainly, yes. Most of the contractors scale up, and they understand that a contract is a contract, and a contract goes for a certain period of time. There was some hope, of course, that the next gas train might have been announced while the current gas train's being constructed, but any prudent businessman would have taken that into account. And so, I think that's one of the reasons why the downturn this time is pretty modest, because the local businesses really didn't over. So in the sort of mining construction area, didn't overcapitalise. To some extent, Darwin was in inverted commas overbuilt. You can never really be overbuilt, but it was overbuilt, and so therefore vacancy rates sort of going past what you'd say national levels. But on the other hand, history shows in Darwin that these cycles are common every 5 to 8 years, and that, as I say, this is a pretty modest one.
We've seen the federal government announce in the last week or so that it plans to spend around about $7 billion on defence over the next 10 to 20 years in the top end. That obviously supplies a significant growth sector for the Northern Territory economy. Where else have you identified any opportunities or places, areas that we're failing?
Well, okay, just on defence, it's a big issue. It is big, and I think it's bigger than even the NT News is saying. That really, this $20 billion over 20 years defence is 7 or 8% of the NT economy, and I think of our research that it will grow much more quickly because that's just a direct defence spend that excludes, for example, the US posture, and it excludes a lot of secondary spend. So I would think that in a 10 or 15 year run, you might see defence up to 10 or 12% of the NT economy, and just to give you an idea, that's like a 50% increase in the defence spend. So I'm very positive about that. Some of the things where the territory could do a lot better and there'd be real opportunities would be tourism. Just as a matter of interest, if you looked at the primary growth in Australia at the moment in tourism, Chinese tourists, about 100 million outbound Chinese tourists a year in total, of which Australia gets 1 million. So we think we're good at it, but we're not really. But of that 1 million, Darwin only gets 1.4%.
So when you get 140,000 Chinese tourists a year come to the Northern Territory, so does that mean you think that it's right that the Northern Territory government is pushing for plans for things like a 6-star hotel in Darwin and direct flights to major centres in China?
Absolutely, it is. I think those policies are on the mark, and I think that there needs to be a lot more deep thinking about the wide range of things you need to do in tourism. And let me give you an example. The most visited attraction in Melbourne. Melbourne has the fastest growing tourism in Australia at the moment. International tourism, compounding at 11%, Adam. But Federation Square is the number 1 attraction. The number 2 attraction is Crown Casino, but number 3 is Victoria Markets. And so it's not just a matter of building hotels. It's actually it's placemaking. It's easier to understand when for those of us that were around when the Japanese tourist boom happened, because it was golf courses, outdoors, cans, and very similar to, in many respects, attractions that Australian domestics liked. But the Chinese visitor's quite different. And on the second time that they come to Australia, and it's beginning to happen, they're very interested in the natural environment. So if you can hook them up front, you'll get them back, and that's when they'll become free, independent travellers. And it's a huge market, and one that the territory could definitely do a lot better in.
Brian Haratsis, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
No worries.
There's the Chief Executive of Macro Plan Australia, Brian Haratsis. So there he goes. 1.4% of the 1 million Chinese visitors that Australia gets, only 1.4% of them come to the Northern Territory. And as he says, Australia only attracts 1% of the outbound Chinese tourist market. Depending on who you